Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. Brian Winnekins from the NAFB convention. Thank you to dairy farmers of Wisconsin, Amplify Health. Also, Wisconsin Soybean Association, Wisconsin Corn Growers Association, some of our NAFB sponsors. We're with Greg Doud. He's President and Chief Executive Officer of National Milk. They had their recent annual convention, and we're going to talk with Greg a little bit about that and some dairy issues. And Greg, thank you for joining us this morning. Well, one of the things that came out from your national convention was you said you're very optimistic and bullish on the dairy industry.
Yes.
Why?
Well, we've got, we had to up this number this year. We've got 11 billion in new dairy processing in the U.S., 23, 24, 25, 26. This isn't pie in the sky. This is stuff like the new Hillmar cheese plant in Kansas, Fairlife stuff coming online. Plants that have been built or and about to fire up here, out in the Northwest, they've got a new one finally going. That's an investment in U.S. dairy farmers. That's the future of the industry we've got so many other industries in agriculture in the U.S. right now where their supply isn't enough to keep the processing they have going. They're clinging on to this, and if they lose that processing capacity, then that limits their ability to grow. Dairy has the opposite problem, and that's right where you want to be. This allows us to grow well into the future and expand in terms of new products, new technologies, and on the export side of the equation.
We're going to have a lot of cheese capacity, cheese processing coming online. Okay. Does everybody in the United States have to triple their cheese consumption here to soak some of that up? Because if we don't have the demand, then we're going to have even lower prices than we do now on the milk side.
Well, it's a combination of things. The first question is, or is somebody going to be out without a chair if the music stops here on the demand side of the equation? Yeah, we'll have to see how all that shakes out. But we're really competitive internationally on cheese. And I'm actually very interested to see, we haven't seen the trade data in quite a while because of the shutdown here. I think there's a chance that we could set a record this year in terms of dairy exports. And you say, well, we've got all this retaliation, all these things going on. How could that be? Well, actually, the only retaliation against U.S. dairy is a 10% tariff from China on dairy. And does 10% really keep us out of the Chinese market on whey? Not really. It dings us a little bit, but we're pretty big in that business, and the demand for the Chinese demand for whey hasn't been great, but everywhere in the rest of the world, it's business as usual. And you have to keep in mind, since a year ago, the value of the dollar has come way down here, and it has made us really competitive. We've sold a bunch of butter into Europe this year. We've sold butter into Australia this year. We're at low prices, but we're moving this stuff internationally. And we're giving the Europeans fits.
Talking with Greg Doud from National Milk at the NAFB convention. Mentioned trade. Okay, we have the review of the USMCA. And do you have concerns with that? That's because of some of the trade issues we've had that suddenly it's like, we're not doing this anymore.
Well, we have to keep in mind that Canada is still our second biggest export market. Mexico is number one, Canada is number two. And this all comes down to the tariff rate quota discussion of, the way that works is we sell Canada a certain amount at a low tariff, and once we hit that quantity, then the tariff jumps up. Well, the way Canada decided to allocate and have always allocated that tariff, well, they give it to people that aren't interested in buying or importing from the U.S. or anybody. So they kind of pigeonhole it so it doesn't get used. That was not part of the deal. The Canadians know it, that we know it. We already took them to a dispute settlement on this, was the first dispute under the new USMCA. We didn't get the answer we wanted, so we've got to sit down and sort this out. And everybody understands that. The administration understands that. Ambassador Greer, USTR, the president. This is going to be a tough conversation because we're dealing with the Canadians. In dairy, this is going to be tough, but everybody knows that this has got to get sorted out.
Domestically, some bills going through whole milk in schools. Again, it's from a standpoint for myself personally, it's very frustrating because it's like, okay, look, we've got all of the data now. Let's get on with it. Why can't we just get on with it?
We're so close. So one U.S. Senator also Brooks from Maryland, has a hold. 99 senators have said we're good with this. And we're right now, as we speak, today or tomorrow, going to see if we can get her to lift her hold. That means we would have 100 U.S. senators. This would pass under unanimous consent. Last year in the House, we know we'd already passed 330 to 99. We have a new bill, so we'd have to pass in the House again. We know we could do that. We have been the amount of work and effort by the lobby teams, IDFA, nmpf in Washington on this issue. We are so it's right there. We got to get this done this year. And then, but the other side of this is we can do this under the dietary guidelines. And so the dietary guidelines are going to come out here, around the end of the year, plus or minus. And that's what we told, these senators. Hey, look, there's some stuff in that bill that benefits you guys and help. So you want to use that and declare victory, or you want to let USDA do all this and you get none of that? So we have been working really, really hard on this, and we are so close.
Meanwhile, another issue that Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin's worked on forever has been this labeling deal with FDA. And again, she knows my frustration because I say, look, wait a minute. A government organization is not enforcing their own rules. You are on a committee that oversees this group, FDA. Why don't you say, enforce your rules on the dairy labeling, or we're cutting you off from the money? Now, again, maybe that's why I shouldn't be in charge of anything, but why is it we have to pass a law to enforce a law? I don't get it.
Okay, so here it is. 2 years ago, my very first day on the job, we hired a consultant to help us on this issue. This issue makes me crazy. I'm a farm kid from Kansas. This is something that we are going to move heaven and earth to get done after all these years. I mean, Jim Mulhern and I, we talked about this. So we've made a big change here to really leverage this situation. It's a whole new FDA. It's a whole group of folks. We've had some really interesting meetings with these folks. You've got new bureaucrats involved and in charge of all of this. Can I tell you we're going to win this thing and get this done? I don't know, but I will tell you there's a very different conversation now about this topic than there ever has been before. And you are exactly right. We don't need to change anything. We just need to get them to enforce what's on the books.
I'm sorry to be such a grumpy old guy, but I've heard this story before. I've seen this movie before, and and we've had supportive FDA heads, and then they've said, well, we need to do a study. No, you don't. You don't need a darn study. And I shouldn't get so emotional of it, but this is something that is crazy. This makes zero sense. You have rules in place, and we're having to study it again. Again, this boggles my mind with how the Food and Drug Administration says milk comes from a nut. Okay, I don't get it.
I'm going to stop you. Several months ago, we went in and met National Milk, myself and Clay and our folks. We went and sat down and met with the bureaucracy on this issue. We brought these products with us. This is a one whey protein, synthetic whey protein derived from the fermentation of a fungus. And they want to call this animal-free dairy milk. Not in any universe is that legal. We actually poured it in a glass and made these folks take a sip of it. We're not fooling around here. We have gone right to the source of these folks. I want you to know this. I want everybody to know this. And said, look, what you're doing is not allowed. You've got to make the change. And to their credit, you know what they did? They took the product. They said, we didn't even know this was in the marketplace. So this is part of the conversation, too, is you've got to literally get their attention at that level and say, no, you're not, you can't just ignore the situation here anymore. There's too many of these products, too much of this stuff going on. Get a hold of it and make it happen. And so we do have their attention. I want you to know that.
We're going to have to leave it there. But Greg, again, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks again.
These are great conversations. Thank you.
Greg Doud with National Milk from NAFB. I'm Brian Winnikins.